Well, I've come along to the Steam Packet headquarters to speak to the chairman of the group, and that's, of course, Mr. Robert Quayle. Interesting, obviously, it's got to start there. The timing of your announcement about restructuring of the company on the very day that your potential competitors are about to have their moment in the sun. You sort of trounced them slightly. You're going to tell me, of course, it was complete coincidence.
No, it wasn't complete coincidence, Paul. We have just completed a financial restructuring of the group. And this is really the first opportunity we've had to make a public announcement about it. But at the same time, we are aware that there is a potential competitor on the horizon, and amongst other things that have been said about our operation and about the reasons for setting up a competing line is the fact that the Steam Packet company has a substantial amount of debt in it. Now, I'm not quite sure why that's of such interest, but I think the inference is that we are financially crippled and can't actually provide a suitable service or will subside at the first sign of opposition. That is patently untrue, and we wanted to lay that rumour to rest very quickly and say the Steam Packet's finances are now extremely good state thanks to the restructuring, and there is absolutely no question of us either failing to provide the service that we've been providing, I think, quite successfully over the past 15 years, or indeed at sensible prices, which we've also been doing over that period.
You've restructured, so you tell us, there's no information whatsoever in your press release, no details, nothing for us to challenge you on that.
Well, it is a private company, and the commercial confidences are to be respected, I think. But at the same time, it was in the public domain as a result of questions in Tynwald as to the level of debt which the Steam Packet company had found itself carrying. And I would remind you, of course, that we didn't borrow the money for ourselves. Unlike certain other institutions on the Isle of Man which have got large debts, this was a debt that was foisted upon us by a previous purchaser of the company who's now walked away into the sunset. We found ourselves carrying a level of debt, the servicing of which was really unsustainable. There was never any danger that the Steam Packet would subside because our lenders and shareholders are one and the same now, and you're not going to get shareholders moving in on their own company and saying, well, you haven't paid the mortgage, we're going to come and take the assets. There was never any question of that, but I think there has been a realistic assessment of what is a sensible figure of debt to attach to a trading company like the Steam Packet, and the group has been restructured so the Steam Packet is carrying only the sort of level of debt that you would expect from a company of this nature with the sort of turnover we have and the sort of business we operate on.
I mean, the fact is, when you were, or still are, a monopoly as such, I mean, it's a bit of a cash cow, isn't it? I mean, there's nobody else to go to. You've got the user agreement.
No, it's not a cash cow, Paul, because we have regulated fares. I mean, the whole purpose of the user agreement is to provide stability, security, guaranteed services for the Isle of Man. And the great result of this user agreement, which has been going for 15 years now, is that the Isle of Man enjoys frequency of service and the level and quality of services that it has never had in the past. And what's more, the prices are regulated. Our fares are controlled by government.
You are a monopoly as such. Now, when there was a bit of competition, when a bit of competition came in, suddenly, with your big contracts, there was suddenly room for renegotiation, and you've been hit, haven't you, by those renegotiations because prices came down.
Yes.
So you did have movement, and therefore you were overcharging to some degree, or you found ways of making cuts.
No, we weren't overcharging. What has happened as a result of the previous competition with Mesron was that we were forced, in order to compete, to drop our freight rates, and we did so, and that has obviously hit the revenue of the company. But you see, this is ignoring the whole purpose of the user agreement. The user agreement is intended to provide a totality of service to the Isle of Man, passenger service, freight service, and everything in between. And what it recognises is that a lot of the services that we provide, or indeed that any operator who would have an effective monopoly, a lot of those services are going to be provided at a loss. I mean, I'm sure you've travelled on the Ben Macree when it's had about sort of 20 trailers going back to the UK, about 3 cars, in the depths of winter. Do you honestly imagine that the cost of the revenue generated by those few vehicles is going to pay the fuel costs or the manning costs of that voyage? Of course it isn't. The whole point of the user agreement was to ensure that there could be a degree of cross support. Now, our freight rates were supporting a lot of our unprofitable passenger services and continue to do so. And the effect of reducing our freight revenue means that there is less spare capacity to support passenger revenues. And our big worry about another competitor coming onto the scene, who we're not clear what he wants to provide. I mean, there's a lot of talk about passenger services at certain times of the year and freight services that aren't going to compete with us or whatever. I'm not quite sure where they're going to come from if they don't compete with us. But actually, if we have to drop our marginal freight rates on certain traffic in order to compete, it's going to affect our total revenue, which will inevitably affect our ability to provide the special offer passenger fares. 80% of our passengers travel at less than our regulated fares. Our ability to make those sorts of offers are going to be reduced, as is our ability to invest in new vessels and this sort of thing. So a certain number of people may benefit in the short term from a little bit of competition on freight, but in the long term, the island is going to be the loser, and that's our fear.
Lots more to talk about on this one. We'll have that in our next section.